Good morning. There's a video out that's been made by a creator. Her name is Don't Hate Create. You may already watch her videos. She does make, I think, a lot of videos on Delphi. I'm sure I've seen a few on Delphi from this creator. And she's just bringing up the idea of coercion, maybe, of somehow Richard Allen being strong-armed into admitting that he was in certain clothing on the day of February the 13th, 2017. And she says, how could he 6 years later possibly know? Well, I think it's probably indelibly etched in his mind because he knows he was there and he went and talked to an officer at some time vaguely in 2017. I'm pretty sure that if this was the situation for me, I'd probably really remember if they were innocent or guilty. So I just wanted to discuss this a little bit because there's a few interesting threads of thought that we could have, I guess, or at least I find it interesting to ponder what could have happened if Richard Allen had taken another tact. You've got to realize that Nick McClelland has signed off in the PCA that he will be guilty of perjury if anything in this PCA is something that is contrived or a lie. And so one is going to just assume for now that later down the track, when finally this goes to trial, that Nicholas McClelland will be able to explain and prove that Richard M. Allen did of his own free will give up this information about what he was wearing on February the 13th, 2017. So we know that Richard Allen is accused of, it's a count one, murder. He's accused of being the person that has committed or attempted to commit a kidnapping against victim 1, Abby Williams, and victim 2, Liberty German, on or around or thereabouts, he says on or about the time of February the 13th, 2017. Now, with regards to this attire, if Richard Allen had insisted, hey, I think I might have been in black, maybe I was in black, would that cast doubt enough that he's the man on the bridge? Actually, maybe so. And if there's no hard evidence that has come from the raid of his home or from the crime scene, because the bullet, if it's only been, if it hasn't been fired, but it's just sort of been, dropped out of the gun, I can't remember the term, then those striations or any markings on the bullet, it's not going to hold up in court. A good defense attorney will be able to shoot that down. If it had been fired out of the gun, that's another story with regards to forensically examining the bullet and matching it to a gun. If he'd said, I think I wore black. I can't really remember. Maybe it was a black tracksuit. Maybe it was just my black jeans and a black jumper. It could then be argued that he was maybe a man in black that was seen only down near the Freedom Bridge and not on the Monon High Bridge. The person on Monon High Bridge is definitely described as wearing clothing similar to what we see in the BG video. And again, we're going to have to wait and see what evidentiary weight we can give to these witnesses, how much we believe their testimony. But that would have been better for him, right? So I guess this might be what Don't Hate Create is saying. Why would Richard Allen give up voluntarily information that makes him look like he really is Bridge Guy? Well, maybe because he knows that he was seen standing on platform 1 of the bridge, and he feels like it makes it worse if he tells this lie and another lie. It's going to look worse, rather than sort of telling the truth and then trying to get out of it because no one saw anything else. And he's thinking they've got no proof. He may not even have known when he's being interviewed in October 2022 that there was a bullet found. He may never have realized in his excitement, in the arousal, in the intensity, in the stress, in the shock, in the, that situation of committing a double homicide, somehow never even noticed afterwards that he's missing a bullet that he had chambered in his gun. So, I mean, that seems quite stupid, right? You'd think you'd get home and go, shivers. I feel, that I put 6 bullets in this gun and now I've only got 5. I'm in deep shit. But then he might have thought, it's never been mentioned. He might not be aware of how police operate in keeping things secret. He may have thought it was dropped somewhere else that he cocked the gun, and not at the crime scene. Who knows? But he's not the only person that was there that could be described as wearing this clothing either. I mean, it's such a uniform of people in that area, it seems, of nearly any age. When we think of David McCain, flannel shirt guy, I bet your mind pictures him on that 501 trail in a flannel shirt. Well, we know that when Michael Catt filmed David McCain, asked him a few questions, realized that he'd been on the trails and had seen Bridge Guy, or someone who may have been Bridge Guy, David McCain was wearing a black and white flannel shirt. So we picture him on that trail, on that day, wearing that uniform. But he may not have been wearing a flannel shirt on February the 13th, 2017. He could have been wearing blue jeans and a blue Carhartt jacket, for all we know. Same with Daniel Pearson. Blue jeans of some sort of loose fit, some sort of jacket, a denim jacket possibly, right? Or a black jacket. But it all brings into question, is this Richard Allen? But what makes things bring this picture into focus of Richard Allen being the Bridge Guy is the very timeline that Richard Allen gives you, and the fact that his physicality is the one that fits the image of the person that is filmed walking on that bridge. Ronald Logan, no matter what anybody tries to tell you, whether it's Rick Snay or the UAP people, image detection, or 1967 Sanders, whether, whomever it is, Harvey Carroll fitting his pork chop into flannel shirt guy's face. I mean, flannel shirt guy David McCain, Ron Logan, Daniel Pearson even, none of them physically look like Richard Allen, and none of them look like BG. Richard Allen looks like BG. Richard Allen has BG's body. He has BG's body. His frame, the proportions are him. That's what is nailing it. And when people say, well, this is just made up, it's a made up film, and BG doesn't exist as a true person, he's a character, because, you know, part of this conspiracy theory that people like Eye of Apophis like to spew. Mind the noise. Sorry about the noise. But, you know, in these conspiracy theory videos, now there's nothing wrong with the conspiracy theory. Conspiracies are occurring, they're being devised, they're being carried out all around the world every second of the day, and there's nothing wrong with exploring conspiracy theories because they're just part of our world, they're part of our reality. However, making up bullshit that's not based, you know, that decides to, that can only exist if you ignore facts, that's not a conspiracy theory. Well, I mean, it is, but it's not a valid one, and it's not worth your brain cells to be wasted on. So what they like to gloss over, these people who like to say that Abby on the Bridge isn't real and that sort of thing, that she was never there, they don't realize, or they conveniently forget, or they ignore the fact that Abby is in the Bridge Guy video. In this 43-second video, Bridge Guy is coming toward Abby and Libby, Abby being in front of Libby, in between Libby and Bridge Guy, and she is edited out of the video. We're not allowed to see that. Now you'll say, oh, we're not allowed to see it because it proves that it's all fake. Well, look, I think people just need to learn to have some patience. I can understand that they worry about miscarriages of justice and that they don't want people to be incarcerated, taking away income from their families, taking away being free to live their lives as a citizen, you know, when they've been wrongly accused of a very heinous crime. I mean, that is quite criminal in itself, isn't it? And, you know, of course there are a lot of questions around this case, but we're yet to get to court. One would think that Richard Allen would want to be exercising or asserting his right to a speedy trial. Innocent people want a speedy trial. They don't want to languish in jail and allow a flow of time whereby prosecutors can really work on a case. They want to get into court and get out, prove their innocence, and be released. And that's not what is happening. People don't seem to be able to understand the probable cause affidavit when it comes to talking about this clothing attire and things like that. I'm not saying this necessarily about don't hate, create. I don't want you to get that impression. I'm just saying quite generally, you see some very, very stupid comments in comment sections. You know, look, if Richard Allen, on whatever date in 2017, when he talked to whichever officer, if he did talk about his clothing attire, it's certainly not mentioned in the PCA. And, I mean, there could be two very good reasons for that. One very good reason would be that he wasn't asked, which is ludicrous. And the other very good reason would be that he was asked and he did say, and this just adds to the incompetence, the embarrassment, and the culpability of the state of Indiana in regards to what is happening now with Richard Allen. So the affidavit actually just says that he talked to an officer, an unknown officer, in 2017. It doesn't say the time, and it doesn't say anything about him stating what he was wearing. Okay, so it says, investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard M. Allen in 2017. The narrative stated, Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30. He parked at the Old Farm Bureau building. Now, we know that the Old Farm Bureau building is southeast of the old CPS building and actually quite near his home. Richard Allen would have had to practically drive past the Old Farm Bureau building on his long way round, and maybe, he was kind of giving himself away then, because the normal way, a normal person on some sort of normal expedition to the trails would probably just drive the very quick way through town and find a park that way. But instead he's gone the long way around, heading south and then west and then north up 300. So he's taken quite a long route, and he calls it the Old Farm Bureau building. But where he describes it and where he walked to the Freedom Bridge plainly means that it's the CPS building. So he parked at the Old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. He noted one was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trail head. However, he did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. So I guess at the time the foliage was so sparse that you could look left down to the mayor's gate, and he says he didn't see any cars parked there. There would have been one parked there, the woman that saw him up on platform 1. So when we say I read that wrong. I thought that was pretty weird. He stated there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge. Sorry, guys. There were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead, however, did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. His cell phone did not list an IMEI, but did have the following: MEID, and there's a number, and then MEID HEX and a number. Potential follow-up information. Who were the 3 girls walking in the area of Freedom Bridge? And that's what's written all in that indented couple of paragraphs. So he was using a burner phone, okay? He was using a burner phone. Now, investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the former Child Protective Services building, as there was not a Farm Bureau building in the area, nor had there been. And I think, we need to wait and hear Richard Allen talk about this too, because, the way that he describes walking to Freedom Bridge, his time frame, the time that he was seen on Freedom Bridge and the time that he drove there, it's clearly the CPS building, but anyway. So, I think it comes down to timing, and it comes down to Richard Allen admitting that he was on the bridge. Are you saying, is someone saying that this was coerced as well? That it was coerced out of him, that he went there at 1:30 and left at 3:30? Or are you just worried about the attire? this creator played clips of TED Talks where they're talking about, false confessions. Now, we know false confessions happen as well, and they usually happen as part of a very long process. And we know plenty of people have been executed, plenty of people have been put away into prison for life after making false confessions for many reasons, sometimes just snapping under pressure, under a lot of psychological torture. But Richard Allen hasn't confessed to this crime, and you're bringing up something about him and his attire as if you can't believe that he might actually talk about that attire. And he probably felt that he had to come clean about that attire because he knew he had been seen. He's had 6 years to think about this. He knew he had been seen, and he's already come forward sometime in 2017 to say that he was there. So it doesn't even really matter what he says that he was in, because, okay, well, you're a liar. But it might have helped him. I don't know. What if he said he was in an Adidas tracksuit pant set, black with the white stripes? Could that have been, what the girl mistakenly saw on the Freedom Bridge? One of the girls saying she saw a man all in black. Are these two different people? The thing is, that flannel shirt guy, Daniel Pearson, Richard Allen, many others, all could have probably have been described as wearing, jeans and a shirt, some sort of jeans and a jacket on that day. None of them have the physicality of Richard Allen. And, now he's just whinging about his care. Oh, he's probably healthier than he's ever been because he's not drinking alcohol daily. He's lost all his booze weight. His organs are probably repairing as we speak, but he's not singing about his innocence. He's just wailing about his unfair treatment, how uncomfortable prison is, whilst at the same time he's kind of prolonging being in there. And he's not really acting innocent. No one else in his family has come out to say, this is dreadful, my husband's being bullied and abused. He's completely innocent. This is mistaken identity. Now, because of the Delphinite community, this online community, and how we do pick at everything that we see in front of us and more, it's probably some good self-preservation not to talk. But if this was my family member and I knew them to be innocent, I would be fighting for them very, very publicly. And I think Kathy and Richard Allen's daughter have attended court dates with him, but I'm pretty sure they haven't given any interviews, made any statements, or anything like that. And I mean, that could be because they're frightened and they know that they're going to be picked apart by vultures and by the curious and by, advocates and people just really interested in them. But at the same time, I don't know, I just find it very odd. And I find it very odd that Richard Allen isn't making any statements about his innocence either. Not that I've seen anyway. So, yeah, I don't really understand people. I mean, look, we all want to make content, I guess. I mean, I don't make content, do I? I'm not a content creator, but I guess people want to make content and have subject matter to work with and mull things over. online and in their comment sections, but it's pretty obtuse what Don't Hate Create is actually trying to get at here. I'm not sure what the meaning of it is or what the value of it is. Yeah, I'm not quite understanding the point of what she's saying, especially juxtaposed against the materials that she has spliced in, with the people talking about, you know, coercion and forced confessions and things like this. It seems to be jumping the gun because we haven't had transcripts or video footage of any interviews, and sure, definitely with Delphi there's reason to be very suspicious and wary of the way investigations are carried out, but I think it's extremely judgmental of people like Nick McClelland, who my little doggy is outside my door, just giving a little let me in growl. Oh gosh, there you go. You know, you are very specifically attacking people's professionalism, attacking people's integrity, their ethics, even their morality. And we've got, you know, and I'm not saying now again, I'm not saying Don't Hate Create is saying this, but plenty of people are saying that Shane Evans is highly connected to these murders, if not the murderer. And look, I know there's a lot of pretty interesting connections between people to do with Delphi. Of course there is. This is a small state. There are 20,000 people in this state. So there's a limited amount of people in certain roles, and you're going to see names pop up again and again. There's plenty of corruption. There's plenty of this generational systematic abuse of, you know, of position and of access to county funding and power and that sort of thing. Of course there is. You know, I feel like the deeper concern here is who burned the Flora Fire, as it's known, the Flora Firehouse down. And why isn't that prosecuted? It, of course, gets a lot less coverage because people don't like to admit it. They'll make up any other reason for the Paddy family and the, you know, the Germans to be, well, some Germans to be loud and to be visible about the case, and for Anna and Becky and Kelsey and Mike, all the people that do talk about the Delphi murders. Of course, it has nationwide attention. They're out there making that happen, and they have every year. And that hasn't happened in Flora Fire. We occasionally have Tracy Rose speaking out. He's seen occasionally in interviews, I believe. But Gaylin Rose is doing some interviews now. They haven't. The people related to the Flora Fire, they have not done the same campaign. And so, of course, it doesn't have national exposure like the Delphi murders do. It's got county or state exposure. But the reason why, and Carter acknowledges this, no matter what you think of Carter, and yeah, he can be a bit of a cockwomble, but he's probably a good man, I don't know. But, you know, he acknowledges that it is the families that have driven that Delphi machine, you know, made it the behemoth that it is. And of course, people are interested in this type of case as it is. It's exactly the type of case that grabs people's attention. You know, Bruce of Mindshock will say, well, we've got to admit, that it is the pieces of this puzzle that make it so fascinating, and of course people are going to be obsessed. People should be obsessed with flora as well, but it just hasn't had the same engine behind it, and it should. But yeah, I'm just not sure what's being said to do with this clothing. I mean, yeah, maybe Richard Allen was told that he was wearing certain clothes and then he just agreed with it. I guess his lawyers are going to be able to argue that for him. Why? Yeah, let's just wait and see. I think there's not a lot of wait and see. I think we, collective we, human beings, people involved in true crime and that sort of thing, we lack patience. We have no patience to let things unfold in due course. We want to fill in the vacuum, and yeah, sometimes being, creators is just that. We are creating things to fill this vacuum, and really what it is, it's just a lot of white noise. I think what's going to be interesting is what comes of Keegan Klein, because the CSAM situation is so deep and dark, and it is connected to Indiana, and that's what could be connected to Keegan Klein, and could even be connected to Richard Allen, because he could be that kind of pervert. We don't know, and we don't know if he was tracking Libby on some app through some other account. It doesn't have to be Anthony's shots. Richard Allen might also be doing what Keegan Klein does, and that is setting up sock accounts to stalk young women and to obtain materials from them. We don't know. I'm not casting that aspersion on him. I'm just saying, he could be connected deeply to the rest of the CSAM putridness that's been going on, worldwide network, with the servers in Indiana. I think I heard on a channel, and if I remember where that was, I will put that in the comment section. And he might be nothing to do with Keegan Klein. Keegan Klein is a scumbag, okay? People need to not feel sorry for this guy. And it is pretty hard to imagine that Tony Klein doesn't have the same sort of proclivities. But Keegan has been asked multiple times, was Tony Klein was he the other user? Was he the other signer, person signing in? Well, it could be through loyalty and fear that he's never going to state that. But when you've got two people in a household and there's two people that are signing into these accounts, yeah, it might be conclusion jumping, but I don't know. People like to say there's no coincidences in true crime or in crime. I tend to think there are often coincidences in crime. But why Tony hasn't been charged with anything? Yeah, could be a reason other than he's innocent. I don't know. What am I trying to say here about CSAM? Yeah, I think we just need to wait and see what McClelland can come up with. I think it's perfectly reasonable that he has a decent amount of time, manpower, and money to do his job, okay? He's not asking a lot for what he has to do. He is prosecuting one of the biggest cases in Indiana, and people are scoffing at him for wanting resources. Now that is pathetic when you think about the resources wasted by multiple authorities and agencies during the course of this 6-year pathetic, sloppy investigation. I think maybe because of the tentacles, maybe because of the CSAM situation, that's what's taken a lot of time and energy. I don't know, but to miss something like this, that Richard Allen came and spoke to someone, vague someone, in a vague space and time in 2017. I mean, that's just pretty dire. And you think, well, did they just want to carry on with another investigation and couldn't if they caught the bridge guy because they might not have access to the same people doing the same things because it would shut down? I mean, I don't know. That's pretty sick, really, because an offender can offend again. How do we know he didn't? Anyway, we have to wait and see. I love to say wait and see, and we don't know. This is such a long ramble. It's probably very boring, and it probably could have taken 6 minutes and 19 seconds, not 36 minutes. So I'll see you later.